how does a pristine, tranquil meadow get violently destroyed by an apocalyptic rot because of a crime that was never actually committed?
Yeah, it sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
usually we associate ecological devastation with some massive, catastrophic action, like an explosion or a chemical spill.
Right, or a biological weapon. But today, we are taking you on a deeply visual journey into a highly cinematic piece of lore from the world of dystopia.
Exactly. We're going to explore exactly how that impossible scenario plays out. We're doing a deep dive into a text called The Dark Forest, a genesis of festering intent.
And our mission for this deep dive is a little unique today. We want to act as your theater audio describers for a stage show based on this lore.
Yeah, we're basically building a visceral mental movie for you.
Totally. We want to paint the visuals of this story so clearly that you can practically see it unfolding in your mind's eye. And more importantly, we want to unpack the terrifying mechanics of how an entire ecosystem can be weaponized by human jealousy.
To understand the destruction, though, we really first have to establish the baseline of what was lost.
Right, setting the stage. So I want you to picture the opening shot as the ultimate visual baseline of peace. It's a simple, completely untouched meadow.
The lighting would be this warm, golden hour wash.
Yes, you can almost smell the sweet, earthy scent of blooming flora. It's a vibrant haven where life is just flourishing in perfect harmony, and you can see this tall, lush grass waving gently, rhythmically, in a soft breeze.
It's the kind of place where nothing bad could ever possibly happen, which makes its corruption so deeply unsettling.
Because the seed of its destruction didn't, fall from the sky.
No, it didn't. It was entirely localized within one man's mind. The text introduces us to a younger brother whose heart has been completely consumed by an obsessive hatred.
So let's visualize the contrast that built that hatred. He's lost his wife to his older brother.
Right. And the older brother isn't just a romantic rival, he's significantly wealthier.
So picture this stark visual divide in the set design of their lives. The older brother lives in this place of opulence, bathed in bright light and comfort.
While the younger brother is literally and figuratively relegated to the dark.
That isolation is the crucible. The sources describe his psychological descent in a way that feels almost claustrophobic to read.
It really does. For months, the younger brother does nothing but sit in a dim room, just staring at a blank wall.
Just endlessly looping the same mental movie of taking bloody, joyous vengeance on his sibling.
Joyous vengeance, that's the exact phrase.
Ugh, when I read that phrase in the text, it actually made me shudder.
Right. It's not a reluctant quest for justice. He is, like, reveling in the idea of the kill.
If we look at real-world psychology, there's a concept called rumination. When a person obsessively replays a grievance, they aren't just thinking, they're actively carving neural pathways.
They're reinforcing a trauma response until it becomes their default state of being.
Exactly. But in the lore of dystopia, this mental looping goes way beyond brain chemistry. He is generating a literal, localized friction in the atmosphere around him.
The imagined act of killing basically becomes his sole motivation for existing.
And that friction builds to a kinetic breaking point. So let's audio describe the climax of this internal buildup.
Picture the stage lighting changing here.
Yes, the warm lighting of our mental movie drops to a cold, sharp, freezing blue. It is the dead of night.
The younger brother is stalking his prey. He's lurking in the heady, imposing shadows of his older brother's estate.
He's got his weapon gripped so tight his knuckles are bone white, and the text gives us this incredibly visceral biological detail. His muscles are fueled by raw adrenaline.
And his veins are described as pulsating red.
Oh, wow, yeah. You can practically see the hot blood pounding at his temples.
He is entirely committed. All those months of staring at a wall, all that psychological rumination, they've coalesced into this single physical moment.
He's ready to strike with the built-up venom of his broken heart. He crosses the threshold into the light, weapon raised.
But he is stopped dead in his tracks.
Right, because he doesn't see his wealthy brother. He sees his former wife.
And specifically, the stage light catches her pregnant belly.
The sudden introduction of vulnerable, innocent new life completely short-circuits his momentum. The tension just snaps.
The text says the presence of that new life instantly purges the festering hate from his body.
He drops the blade, it clatters loudly on the stone, and then he just laughs out loud.
It's this profound, overwhelming release.
He embraces his older brother in a tearful reunion, and in that one instance, the fractured family is completely mended.
On the surface, it really reads as a beautiful moment of redemption. A man pulls back from the brink of a terrible mistake.
I felt the exact same way on my first read. But then I started thinking about the physical mechanics of this universe. In a reality governed by cause and effect, where does it all go?
Right? You can't just generate that much highly pressurized emotional steam and have it vanish into thin air just because you didn't swing the knife.
It's like revving a car engine to the red line and then just taking your foot off the gas. That energy has to dissipate somewhere.
And that is the pivotal concept the lore of Dystopia hinges on. The fundamental law in this universe is that energy, even emotional energy, never truly dies.
It simply changes form.
Exactly. And intense, obsessive emotion actually has an atomic weight.
I love how this source material explains this transition from thought to matter. Can we visualize this coagulation process? Because this is where the imagery gets incredibly dark.
Think about the immense putrid stench of the younger brother's rotting thoughts.
All that unspent murderous intent stripped of its kinetic release, the actual act of murder has to condense.
It transitions from a gaseous state of emotion into a physical solid. It condenses in the air above the brothers into a literal dark seedling.
Picture this dense, pitch-black sea just completely brimming with insatiable hate.
And it floats away from the tearful, happy family reunion.
Drifting up into the cold night sky, entirely unnoticed by the brothers who are busy hugging and forgiving each other.
It drifts on the wind until it lands right in the center of that beautiful, tranquil meadow we visualized at the beginning.
It touches the soil, and it doesn't just sprout like a normal plant. It violently erupts.
The visual translation here is staggering. We are watching psychological trauma mutate into botany on stage.
The lush green grass immediately blackens and dies as these massive trunks burst through the earth, and the text is incredibly specific about the anatomy of this flora.
Right, these trunks are forged of pure hatred, sprouting directly from those dark intentions he harbored for months.
The thorns are the most fascinating detail to me.
Oh, they are razor sharp, and they grow from every single evil thought that the brother was willing to act upon.
Wait, really? Every single one?
Yeah. If he had spent an afternoon imagining slicing an arm, a specific thorn grows. If he visualized a fatal stab, a massive spike protrudes from the bark.
That is wild. It's a fossilized monument to an uncommitted murder. Every single violent thought mapped one-to-one onto the physical environment.
It's terrifying when you think about it.
I look at it as the ultimate form of emotional pollution. In our world, we think of pollution as like smog from a factory or chemical runoff in a river. We regulate it, we measure it.
But here, the toxic byproduct of human jealousy has manifested as an invasive, physical species of plant life.
And the canopy above rapidly weaves itself into this impassable, suffocating labyrinth of twisted black vines, completely blocking out the sun.
The crucial distinction we need to make here is that this forest is not a passive landscape. It isn't just a spooky set piece that happens to look intimidating.
The black vines have transformed into a breathing, conscious entity. The forest itself is the antagonist.
The text makes it clear that this entity is composed of pure evil, and its core driving force is soulless jealousy.
Because it was born from a man deeply jealous of his brother's beautiful life.
Exactly. The forest now possesses a boundless conviction to spread deterioration. It actively seeks to consume everything beautiful and vibrant because it inherently lacks those qualities.
It hates beauty because it is literally made of jealousy. That is such a deeply unsettling motivation for an ecosystem. So how does an entire forest move?
Because the sources describe it on an epic, relentless creep of impending doom toward a place called Brassingtown.
It moves invisibly, inch by inch.
And the mechanism of its movement is where the lore becomes highly interactive with its victims. It feeds off the collective anxiety of the townspeople watching its approach.
The more terrified Brassingtown becomes, the more the populace obsesses over the dark tree line, the more energy the forest harvests to creep closer.
It weaponizes their fear against them.
But there is a horrifying theatrical quirk to how it expands. The movement isn't just a steady crawl.
Right. When the forest is unwatched by humanoid eyes, its behavior completely changes. It violently erupts into sudden growth.
Imagine being a scout from Brassingtown. You are stationed on a hill, tasked with watching the edge of this terrifying black labyrinth.
As long as you maintain eye contact, the forest just breathes slowly, barely inching forward.
But the second you blink, the second you turn your back to grab a canteen of water, bam, it surges.
You turn back around, and hundreds of yards of lush grasslands have been instantly swallowed.
The text mentions onlookers being utterly bewildered by dark red vines appearing overnight where peaceful picnic spaces once stood.
It forces the victims into a state of hypervigilance, which of course only generates more of the anxious energy the forest needs to feed on.
When I read that section, my mind immediately went to a dark, twisted version of quantum mechanics. Think about the observer effect in physics, how particles change their behavior depending on whether or not they are being measured.
That analogy fits perfectly.
When observed, reality is fixed. It obeys the standard laws of thermodynamics. But when unobserved, the probability wave collapses into the worst-case scenario. It's like playing the most terrifying game of red light, green light imaginable.
It exploits a loophole in the way the universe renders reality. But this massive, sudden expansion requires immense caloric fuel. It cannot simply conjure mass out of nothing.
Which brings us to the visceral horror of how this massive breathing entity actually digests the vulnerable travelers who wander too close.
Right, if it's expending all this quantum energy to surge forward, it has to be burning fuel.
So the forest operates as a highly sophisticated psychological carnivore. It sets sensory traps to lure in its sustenance.
Let's audio describe the sensory experience of being caught in one of these traps. You aren't just stepping on a tripwire.
It's an all-encompassing assault on your mind.
The air grows thick with dizzying toxins that completely disorient your sense of direction.
You start experiencing vivid, disorienting hallucinations. And the most chilling part, the auditory trap.
You start hearing hypnotic calls.
The forest uses the disembodied voices of your loved ones, perfectly mimicking their tone and cadence, to lure you deeper into its suffocating depths.
It is incredibly insidious. It preys on the human need for love and connection to draw you into the dark.
And once a victim is finally lured in and ensnared by the crushing black vines, the biology of the digestion process is entirely unique to this lore.
The victim doesn't just decompose normally. As the vines crush them and their life slowly fades, their body is actively transformed into a dense yellow dirt.
Try to visualize that color contrast on stage in your mind. You have the pitch black canopy, the dark red overnight growth of the vines, and then this sickening bright yellow soil left behind where a human being used to be.
The reason for this specific biological breakdown is that the process isn't just physical, it's psychological.
The vines act like a massive vascular system. They specifically siphon the victim's blood in order to extract memory engrams.
And the text describes the memories themselves as being, quote, delicious to the forest.
It's starving for the joy it was denied in its creation. Because it's an entity made of soulless jealousy, it cannot generate its own positive experiences.
It has to consume your happy memories just to sustain its mass.
The tragic irony of the whole system is staggering. Think back to the origin point we visualized earlier.
This entire catastrophic entity was born from a broken heart and a fractured family, a man who felt isolated and unloved.
Now, the resulting ecosystem uses the voices of loved ones to lure new victims, physically digesting their happy memories to fuel its own endless resentment.
And it doesn't even keep the physical remains. After the memories are stripped and the biological matter is turned to that yellow dirt, the waste is spat out through those thick vine-rooted trunks.
The exhaust of this biological engine is expelled as a dark, hideous gas. The sources poetically describe this gas as being heavy with the ash of despair and the dust of dismay.
It's the perfect cycle of emotional destruction. It consumes beautiful memories, extracts their value, and literally exhales depression back into the atmosphere of dystopia.
You can just visualize this heavy, dark smog rolling out from the black canopy, choking the life out of the surrounding meadow, continuing this unstoppable journey to swallow the world whole.
It forces us to deeply consider the physical reality of our internal lives. The lore uses extreme fantasy to illustrate a very grounded truth about how we process our own emotional weight.
So, sitting in the audience of our mental movie right now, what stands out to you?
Is it the sickening visual of a human being chemically reduced to dense yellow dirt?
Or is it the creeping paranoia of an entire forest that sprints toward you the second you blink?
Or is it the mind-bending fact that this entire apocalyptic threat exists simply because a guy thought about doing something terrible?
Let's bring all these visuals together to summarize the journey. We started with the ultimate picture of peace, a vibrant, tranquil meadow.
We watched as the unspent, highly pressurized jealousy of a single human being condensed from a thought into a physical, dark seed.
We watch that seed violently erupt into trunks of hatred and thorns mapped to specific evil
We
intentions.
tracked this conscious breathing entity as it crept toward Brassingtown, feeding on anxiety and leaving forward whenever it was unobserved.
And finally, we witness the horrifying biology of its digestion, using the voices of loved ones to lure victims, extracting their memories, and exhaling a smog of pure despair.
The core takeaway from these sources is a haunting lesson about the conservation of energy. In a closed system, even unacted malice has a real, tangible weight.
If resentment is nurtured and allowed to fester in the dark over months and months, it has consequences that can reshape the world around you, turning a sanctuary into an all-consuming nightmare.
It's a striking metaphor for how unexpressed resentment in our real lives can manifest as a toxic environment. We've all walked into a room where the unspoken tension is so thick you can practically choke on it.
This text just takes that concept and grows black vines out of it. It's a terrifying reminder to check our own emotional exhaust, to not let the pressure cooker build too high in the dark rooms of our own minds.
It is a profound warning, but it also leaves us with an incredibly compelling counterpart to consider.
Oh, absolutely.
This entire sprawling apocalyptic forest was coagulated from purely unacted, deeply held hatred, which raises a fascinating question for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
If festering malice can build such an impossible, horrifying physical landscape,
What kind of impossible, breathtaking physical landscape might be born from a purely unacted, deeply held intention of profound, unconditional love?
wow. From the yellow dirt to the seeds of something beautiful. Keep your eyes on the tree line, and we'll see you next time.